All right, we're live on Facebook.
10:01 or 1:01, depending on where you're looking. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Smart with Your Money Live and the final episode of Talk Wealth to Me Live, or Talk Wealth to Me, the podcast of 2022. We will be taking a small break from the podcast. We will be coming back in the new year with a new look and even a new name, possibly. So we're going to be rebranding the podcast. Exciting news coming up, which we'll talk about as we go. But I'm so excited to have both Felipe and our friend Katie, who is going to be there, I hope, back and forth here and there. But we're just super excited to be there with you today and to talk about everything that was 2022, which was, for me personally, a roller coaster of a year. I know that most of us had crazy roller coaster years in 2020 and then a little bit in 2021 with COVID, a pandemic, and everything else that was going on. But for me, this was probably the most difficult year of my life. And yet this podcast thrived. It was super fun to do. And Phil, today we get to relive some of those things and answer a bunch of the questions that we got during the year.
We do. And if anyone's watching and they have another question, feel free to drop them in the chat, comment it over on Facebook, and it'll be relayed over to us. But, different type of presentation for Swim Live today, but, kind of looking back at the year that was and then looking forward. First, we wanted to go over some of our most common questions that we've heard in 2022. And this could be a long list, but try to exclude the ones that we hear regularly just throughout the years, and maybe include just the three that we heard a lot in 2022. We'll kind of briefly explain them, although each one of these could be its own college course. So
they really could.
Not explaining it in its complete detail, but we also have had episodes on them. So maybe you'll hear about a couple of them here coming up. The first one is, what's inflation?
Oh boy. It is so funny that there are a couple generations that have no idea what inflation is,
right?
Especially this most recent one.
I mean, I remember learning about it in college, but it was just something you learn. And we'll touch on inflation a couple times today, but basically it's the increased cost of living. And I'm not going to do it justice if I try and explain it, but we've had a couple episodes on inflation with Professor Jim Charkins, and you'll hear a little excerpt of one coming up here. I really, really recommend you check those out because it's going to give you a much more in-depth and better elaborated explanation of what inflation is. And even then you're sitting there like, I've taken a couple econ classes at this point, and I think I got it, but you learn more about it as you go and as you experience it.
Yeah, and inflation is something that we deal with every single year. It's just part of our economic life. We all know the word inflation, and we hear it, and we get those 3% pay increases typically, because that's typically what the cost of living goes up per year. But then we have those abnormal years, those years where, we've heard of recessions, we've heard of those things where things are less expensive, but the cost of, different products and goods, it changes all over the place. And yet with this inflation that we're seeing this year, the cost of just about everything went up, and there's tons of reasons for that. And Jim Charkins talk about one of my favorite guests. He really makes it so easy. He makes economics so easy to understand and so interesting that it does spell out what the reasons are and what it does mean for all of us.
Yeah, and a simple way to look at it is, if you think about pushing your shopping cart at the grocery line and you get to the register, there was a time when there was a dollar amount. You go back a year and a half to your everyday groceries, that dollar amount at your checkout, your items are, for a lot of us are similar from week to week. That price amount is going to be higher than it was a year and a half ago. And it's to the point where you might notice it and say, wait a minute, what happened? Like, what
Yeah.
did my kids sneak into my shopping cart when I wasn't looking? Because the price has just gone up. So
A
definitely a
$50
lot of
trip
research.
last year is probably in the 60s or even
Yeah,
70s this year.
yeah, depending on the items. Interest rates are going up, but what does that mean to me? It can mean a lot. You know, interest rates going up has
Everything to
um
do with inflation.
it's inflation. It's the Fed's uh
It's
attempt to
the only
curve
way.
and hold back inflation. We're obviously looking at hoping that they find the right balancing point, which is harder than I think most of us would appreciate. But interest rates go up, that means your variable debt interest rates go up, like your credit cards.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you're carrying a credit card balance, this can make your payoff debt journey a lot more difficult because you're paying at a higher percentage point.
Yes.
This affects your ability and how much you would pay if you were to take out a bigger loan, say a mortgage. And I think we saw that in the in the real estate market a lot. Lending has changed, and I tell people during presentations, it's not because your credit got worse that you can't get a 3% anymore. It's just that they're not there anymore.
That's right.
That interest rate has climbed up, and what it does is it makes it less affordable, and it makes it more difficult to purchase the same big purchase, for example, a home. It's a lot harder to do it now than it was a year and a half ago, or you're just at a different price point at this point in time. And
Right.
that, that makes it difficult to spend, which then less spending should help inflation. And that's the idea behind the whole cycle. So, buckle in. 2023 might have more inflation and more
Right.
interest rate
It
questions. Who
just
knows?
means you may not be able to afford as much car or as much house that you would have when interest rates were down in the all-time lows.
Right.
But this is you look back at in the late 70s and 80s when things were quote unquote good and interest rates were pretty comparable. They were at the 7% for a house, which is crazy, but it's also the cost of housing wasn't anywhere near what it is
Yes.
today.
That's definitely something where the increased interest rate yet to correlate with decreased house prices,
Right.
at least in our market,
At least in our market.
a lot of markets around the country. So we'll see if that
They have
kind of
definitely
catches up.
flattened out though.
It has. It's not climbing at the ridiculous rate that it had been
Right.
for the previous 2 years. Then the last question from this section is, so how do I budget with all this going on?
It's a common question.
That's a common question. I think that could fit pretty much in any year. But this one was a special one, Chase, as you mentioned, in the fact that you have that high inflation, you had that housing, whether it's going up in a lot of areas, like here in San Diego, the fact that people were out there buying houses left and right, and now they can't, that's made the very tight renters market even harder.
Right.
Because all of a sudden people who were looking to be homeowners are back in the renting market. And you hear the stories of people, having to move, and all of a sudden they're looking around like, how am I going to be able to afford the new rent?
Right.
And your grocery trips, your gas prices, all that increasing, although gas, knock on wood's been a little lower here in San Diego.
It's really, really sad when your daughter says, "Dad, look,
it's
gas is only $4 a gallon."
Right.
I'm like,
it was very exciting. I saw it on a couple Facebook groups and stuff where people were saying, guys, gas is $4 at Costco.
But
that's
what makes me crazy is a lot of, they set these prices and then they get us kind of they take us to this top price, and then they get us to a point where we think 4 is good. No, it's not.
We would have been yelling and screaming about 4 in the negative direction just a few years ago.
Yes, it should not cost people $100 to fill up their gas tanks. It just shouldn't.
It was getting close even for my Honda Civic. that prices were getting high. I feel for you with it.
What do you think it's like with my truck and my Yukon?
That's what I'm saying. I feel for, and I was pumping gas, looking at the price on my Civic. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. This is a tiny car. So, how do you budget for it? Track your expenses, find the budgeting method that works for you. And I start with track your expenses because a lot of times we think we know how much we spend on things. I talk to people all the time and we do the budgets one-on-one, and we get to the end and I say, hey, it looks good. Looks like you have an extra $400 or $500 sitting around at the end of the month. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And you messed up your math. No, I didn't do it. The computer did, because otherwise I would mess up the math. But it's because we don't know exactly how much we spend on some of these things unless you've tracked them, unless you've taken the time to look it up. So they think they spend $400 on groceries, but they don't. You know, they think they spend $150 eating out, but you don't. You might spend more. So tracking those expenses, finding those small leaks. I think it was Benjamin Franklin said, small leaks sink great ships. And that is true, because those small little leaks are the ones that oftentimes keep you from accomplishing your bigger financial goals, whatever.
You had to bring up leaks. You had to bring up leaks.
We had like 3 episodes on leaks. I was shaking my head yesterday, and I had a day off to watch the World Cup, and I spent the whole morning talking to plumbers. So
how many of those plumbers said, oh, we don't work on water heaters?
No, I had them, but they were like, yeah, we can get you in on like Thursday. I was like, are you kidding me? It's a hot water heater. It's 30-something degrees in the morning, and I can't go without a water heater till Thursday. So I had to continue my journey until I found one. I was like, look, I'll make it there tonight. And I'll take a look at it. So, but it's like, well, you had a morning off. What'd you do? Talk to plumbers.
That's speaking of leaks, that's why I mentioned that we don't have a kitchen currently, so we have nothing to cook our food on. So the kids and I have had to eat out, and we're just trying to figure all kinds of different ways to eat more healthy,
get creative,
eat a little bit. Yeah. And so we've had to keep receipts for all this food, and it's wow, how much I am spending per week on food, because I had to do that with my insurance company, and we figured out, okay, we as a family spend about anywhere from 125 to 150 a week on food when we do. So the insurance company will pay on top of that everything. And I flew by that by like day 3 with eating out. It's just even, and again, I'm not eating out at fast food restaurants, right? I'm not going to eat like that. I mean, we could eat cheaper, but it would also be excruciatingly bad for us. I do not need to be like that documentary of Super Size Me, right?
Morgan Spurlock.
Yeah, we are not going to do that. I am not going to do that to my teenagers. So we need to try to eat somewhat more healthy and some good fresh food. And it is very difficult to do that.
Yeah, Sarah and I just watched it in an effort to motivate myself to not go out and eat so much. I remember like that documentary was,
it tastes that good for a reason, right?
Oh yeah.
There's
so we
rewatched
bunch of
crap in it.
She watched it for the first time. I rewatched it, and it made me like, I didn't already. Now I have like an extra reason not to go out and eat, aside from the finances. But
but look at that correlation, how cheap food is relative to real. And
if
food.
You know an expert on, not you, Chase, but if anyone's out there knows an expert on like food deserts and things like that, I'd love to talk to him next year for the podcast. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to go find one, because I think it's a really cool topic that I think we need to cover. But so switching gears here from kind of our regular swim live to some of the things that we did this year on the podcast, and I'll also try and play little audio clips of some of these episodes as we go, just to kind of hear, you can hear how it goes, how the conversation kind of tends to progress. And we're going to do fan favorites, which episodes got the most listens from the first half. So those episodes released in 2022, but June or before. And then we're going to do, because otherwise it's not fair, for the second half. Otherwise those don't have enough time for you guys to listen to them and catch up. So those are QR codes as the episodes come in. You can go ahead and check them out there. First one is inflation today. We've talked about it. We had Professor Jim Charkins. It was a cool episode. I think it was also on your favorites, Chase.
Yeah,
I believe is one of
Chase's
on my fans' favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do some audio sharing here. Everyone, let me know if you can't hear it. We don't share a lot of audio, so and that's for a reason. So
he did explain this so easily, though. I mean, for something that you would think would be so boring, yet it's so important to us. It was really, really fun to
Right.
listen to what he had to say.
Super. And he's I know you hear economics and you think, oh, I don't know if I want to listen to
Snooze
an
fest.
economics
Oh
professor,
yeah.
but this guy's good. And he's very entertaining. So I have it queued up here. And let me know, Chase, if you can hear it.
Experienced it. And so it was a boring subject. And, we had stuff on the test, and usually they kind of got it right. But the good news now, or the bad news, is that everybody does know what inflation is. Anybody who is looking for a car, anybody who's paying rent or house payments, anybody who's eating, we all know what inflation is. You know, the statistical data that we use, the main one that the news uses anyway, not the Federal Reserve, but the news, consumer price index. And that's a measurement of a basket of goods that the Bureau of Labor Statistics prices every month. And then they measure what the average price of all those products are. And so if we look at the latest consumer price index number, it's the highest in 40 years.
Oh, definitely. And this was a April of last year episodes, or April of this year.
April of this year. Don't put us in 23 yet.
I'm
not ready to be 51 yet.
I'm ready to jump
just
into
hold off.
2023.
I am ready to get out of this year, actually.
So this is again one of your favorites, one of my favorites as well, and I think it's just because he makes economics so easy to digest, which was not my experience when I took economics multiple times in college.
Yeah.
Macro and micro, and as a business major, you got to take both of them. So, I mean, I struggled to get through those courses.
I'm just super excited that our fans, or the people that listen to this, the listeners, really like this too, because it was one of my favorites.
Yeah. So it was really cool. That was our most listened to 2022 episode. So, it was a really, really good one. So
shout out to Jim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Job,
we're gonna have to have him back this year again to kind of give us an update. And then for the next fan favorite, we have impulse purchases come in all shapes and sizes. That was our second most.
This didn't make my top 3, but it was right there. I was almost there, because this had a lot to do with my life at the time.
Yeah, so I have a little clip of that one here.
How things in life change, but not only that, the things that we do by impulse, the impulse buy, something that
impulse buyer by
all
nature.
of us have experience with, right? Even if you are not even if you are not one of those people that just impulse buys all the time, right? But we have all gotten to a place where, for whatever reason, whatever's going on in our lives, at that general moment, however we're feeling, sometimes buying something, purchasing something, coming up with a new exercise plan, whatever it might be, we get super excited about it. We go out and we spend the money on it. And then we go, did we actually follow through with it? Is it something that we still do? Is that gadget collecting dust?
So that was the second most listened to episode of the ones we released this year. So
I will tell you that the puppy that my wife really, really wanted, the impulse buy, this was right before Carrie got sick, really sick. I mean, she'd already been diagnosed with cancer, but she was doing really well. And then she really wanted that bigger dog, and we got the poodle pointer. And when Carrie got really sick, she was only like 3.5 months. So it was, here I am with this a poodle pointer. So German short hair pointer and a poodle, we're talking all kinds of energy and needs a job to do. They're bird dogs for the most part. Yeah. So I would like to thank Ryan and Blake, who have our dear Bailey, training her and getting her ready to come back home out there in Knoxville, Tennessee. That was an impulse buy. I found out later, I got stories from a few of Carrie's colleagues about Bailey, and she was like, "Hey, I got cancer. I'm just gonna pull the trigger, whatever. I want this."
I want it.
But it's funny because Carrie later apologized to me saying, "I'm sorry, that you're gonna have to do all, work with this, but she'll be a sweet dog and we'll have her back here soon."
Good. So that was the second most, and then the third most listened to episode released this year was Houseport in Seattle, Reaching for Happiness. That was also in February. That was sparked.
That was a Twitter deal,
article.
right?
It was actually an article that we came across, New York Times article.
That's right.
That got us thinking about it. So here's a clip from that one. 20% increase in Montana is a much smaller dollar amount than a 10% increase in Seattle.
But I do think there's something to be said, though, about the energy of like the city where you live. And I think that there's a problem when we start comparing how much I paid for a house in San Diego to how much my brother-in-law paid for a house in Fairfield, Iowa. It's not the same.
It is not the same.
It's you might have a bigger house, you might have a smaller mortgage, but for me, the cost of living out here, not having to deal with winter, is worth it.
Oh, I agree. I wouldn't leave San Diego.
And also, I lived on the East Coast before, and the cost that I paid for food was outrageous because the produce is not fresh.
It's not nearly as good as here.
Little things spoiled like that.
And they have Mexican food.
No, they don't.
East Coast people, Taco Bell is not Mexican food. Let me just get that off my chest.
Oh, it wasn't even Taco Bell out there. What?
So we also talked about food a couple times.
I agree with Katie 100%, by the way.
Oh, I agree.
There is a reason they say we pay the sunshine tax out here.
I agree. The fact that I could go take a jog pretty much any day of the week and get away with it without having to put on layers and layers and layers, I think is.
Look, I took a walk awesome. Down at La Jolla Beach at the Cove this morning, and it's brisk and it's chilly for us, but man, was it beautiful.
Yeah. So switching gears to the second half, episodes July and later. And I wanted to put this one in its own category just because these episodes haven't been out as much. Otherwise, the whole year was going to be from the first half of the year.
Of course.
So
that makes sense.
The first one I listened to second half of the year was the road trip one that Katie and I did, where we just kind of went over my road trip experience, some tips on how to financially handle a road trip. So I wanted to play a clip from that one. And as I'm playing them, I'm closing the tabs so I can get to them faster, which is not really have a choice. But no, it was, it was hot too. You can't predict what the weather is going to be like. Your road trip ends up in the middle of a heat wave. You couldn't have planned that. Yeah, I think it's an Outcast song where you could plan a perfect picnic, but you can't predict the weather. And it's so true because you just can't. You don't know it's going to be 100+ degrees when you're in that town, and you're not going to be wanting to go on a 5-mile hike. It just, there's some cool hikes, but it's 100 degrees. I don't want to do them, and we're at elevation, and it's humid, so you have to take all that into account. So it was good to be able to have that flexibility along the way.
Oh yeah, that's good. And $30 extra a night for that peace of mind if something happens, that just seems like it's.
Yeah, so that was a fun episode, and the clip there is I paid extra to have the ability to cancel, because how they offer you the non-refundable rate and then the refundable rate. And
yes,
if you go in and you don't hit and you just say I'm going to be there no matter what, now you're stuck in whatever you planned out. It reduces your flexibility, and like I said, you're in Denver, it's 100+, it's humid, and
so you decided to drive right through and just not stay.
No, we decided to change our route and not go back through, not go down into Arizona where it was even hotter, and then work our way back. Stay in
Gotcha.
Denver in the Colorado area a little longer,
Gotcha.
and not go through Four Corners into the Arizona desert.
That was one of the episodes I missed, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so we were gonna do like Arches and Four Corners and the petrified forests in Arizona. It was 100 plus. We weren't gonna actually go do all that stuff, so we stayed in the
Yeah.
mountains a little longer and then worked our way back through
Smart.
Utah.
Another road trip to do that at a different time of year.
Yeah, it's August in Arizona. Not really.
Utah,
We
Southern
went
Utah's
in.
hotter than heck.
Oh yeah, that whole area is just way more than us San Diego San Diegans can handle. And then next one, I think Chase, this is and that was one of my favorites, the road trip episode. So it was a fan favorite and it was one of my favorites. This next one, a fan favorite and one of Chase's favorites, is the medical billing episode with Dr. Virgie, and we talked about the different medical billing stuff. And honestly, this might be the one where I learned the most. I was clueless as to all this stuff.
Well, it's most of us are. That's why it was my favorite. And it just so happened that, we found this and I was interested in this because of what I was going through, what my wife and I were going through at the time with Carrie. I have never really had to deal with any kind of major medical bills outside of working with people who had them, right? And knowing, there was a lot of, and that is a big deal throughout our country, medical bills. In fact, there's a reason that FICO has changed into FICO 9, the weight of medical bills, because it's just so prevalent in our society, and it's really not a true statement on whether you could be a good to lend to or not. Right. You can take a risk on somebody. They might pay all their bills, but then they get hit with hundreds of $1,000s of medical bills that they can't pay, and all of a sudden they're not lend worthy. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Absolutely.
And then with Carrie getting diagnosed and us now having to work that whole world of, weekly visits, specialist visits, regular chemo, all those things, it was mind-boggling how crazy it was to see the medical bills that come in and what they would cost if we didn't have the insurance, and the way the insurance companies work. And by the way, it's very similar to homeowners insurance too. And auto insurance, there's a reason they have all these vendors that they would, highly, because they negotiate prices. So she was amazing in spelling out how to work the system, even if you're underinsured.
Absolutely. So I have a little clip here. Let me play a little clip of this one.
Added stress that you're already taking on because you're sick, and your family is stressed because you're sick.
Exactly. And there's endorphins, there's issues. If you weren't sick before, you're sick when you open the bill, right? The stress is significant. And Felipe, apologies. I don't want to be.
But I think that one got messed up where I had it queued up. But she mentioned something about CPT codes, which I thought was really eye-opening, like you mentioned, and how the billing, that first bill that you get may not be the official bill that you're gonna pay. So make sure that you ask for those. So if you ever find yourself having to deal with just medical billing, take a listen to this episode, because I think I learned a ton. Just the fact that there were CPT codes, I think was enough to be like, oh man, there's just so much in there. And like we talked about during the episode, it takes, you almost have to be a medical billing expert to be able to understand this stuff. And it definitely goes a long way to have that knowledge.
Yeah, it was a great episode, and if you haven't heard it, go back, do yourself a favor. It is well worth it.
Yeah. And then the last one of the fan favorites one was preparing your child for real life experiences.
Experiences or expenses?
Expenses.
They go hand in hand too.
Yeah, same idea. So hopefully this clip is at the right spot. Let me play it.
And so many kids are, and friends of mine, who are dropping their kids off at college for the first time and
crazy.
saying goodbye, and some of them going finally empty nesters, some of them their first child going off to college. And this is a big topic about what kids are prepared for when they are going to go off to school or move out of the house to go take on a career, a new career.
Yeah, I follow a lot of the SDSU accounts on social media, and they keep posting. So this was after one of my news segments that I talked about youth and some of the tips for youth who are just leaving home for the first time, and some of the eye-opening experiences and things parents can do to kind of prepare their kids for that you're on your own type of scenario. And people liked it. I think it was timely too, with a lot of people leaving home for the first time. How do you keep them from becoming the boomerang child that leaves and has to come back because they weren't financially ready?
Well, and trying to, everybody's going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to, do some dumb things. We still do as adults, but if you can mitigate that, if you can just understand a little bit more to where you're not in a major trouble when you're first really just starting out in your life.
And you could prepare your kids for this even ideally well before they're heading out the door.
Yeah, but I mean, as I'm learning, teenagers here, Phil, both my kids are, my daughter's almost there as a full-blown teenager. I don't know anything. They know everything. So I've been told that this changes. I've been told that they'll come back and tell me that I do know something. But
Not
it's
at
hard
the
to
moment.
tell. It's hard to tell kids what they should do.
Well, I always tell people my parents did a good job they did their best to try and get me to save money, avoid debt, all that stuff. Now, did I listen? No, but they tried. And I didn't make a lot of good financial decisions in my early 20s, but the few that I did was only because, a test drive a Corvette down in Mission Valley, and the guy telling me he'd get me financed. And the only reason I didn't buy it, because when my mom sees me pull up in a bright yellow Corvette, she is going to lose her mind.
How old were you?
In my early 20s.
Oh, good gosh.
But this was the early 2000s when everyone was lending money to everyone, and, didn't matter that it didn't matter that I was in my early
living
20s
at home with mom and dad, but check out my car.
Yeah, exactly. But I stuck to my fuel efficient 4-door sedan.
Not uncommon though. Uncommon.
I know. I hadn't thought about it, which kind of brings us to our some of our favorites. Not the fan favorites, but the ones we enjoyed, and we've already touched on a few of them for both of us. But speaking of cars, Chase, we were talking before, and you mentioned one of your favorites was one that we came up with, the topic actually from a Twitter.
Yes.
All right.
Yep. That was one of, we did a couple of those where there were some just absolute crazy
we did
Twitter conversations that were very interesting. And this was definitely one of my favorites, because this was just, unfortunately, we see it far too often, and it just kind of came to the forefront.
So I got here the clip that kind of goes over that one.
This tweet that this woman sent out, and I quote, "Just sold a 2015 Audi to a 26-year-old whose main concerns were paying zero down and having something better than a Nissan," and that's in quotes, that better than a Nissan in quotes. So it turns out that this person's monthly payment is $835 a month. Apparently, she's really hyped about it. And her APR is 28%. Yes, you heard that correctly. 28%. And she finishes the tweet with, "and she didn't even ask," and a little kind of a disturbed emoji face.
Right.
Phil, you sent this to us.
And we see it, Chase, you're right. Unfortunately, it's something that we see. This isn't the first time we've heard of it. This isn't the first time we've had people at presentations come up to us and tell us, like, man, I really messed this up, didn't I?
I get cold sweats just hearing that a little bit. Yes, and you're right. I mean, I don't know how many presentations we've done of talking about lending and interest rates and those kinds of things, and kids coming up, or, a few just sinking in their desks, putting their hands in their face, like shaking their head of like, oh gosh, what did I do?
What have I done?
Yeah. Right.
So that was one of your favorites. And I think your other favorite was the medical billing.
Yep.
Right. And what was your third one?
My third one.
Oh, I have it. I have the clip here. It was cryptocurrency with Paul Lim.
With Paul. Yep.
So let me play
which is really timely right now, by the way.
Oh, I know. Cryptos, especially, yeah.
Oops.
Oop, yeah.
Thing, and that he should really pay attention to it. That's what really got him into it. So, can we take some of those lessons and apply it to money? And the answer is yes. So I'm going to tell you some of the axiomatic rules of money. And here's how this works. Pretend you guys crash landed on a desert island or something like that. And you're in charge of rebuilding society. And someone's put you in charge of determining what we should use for money on this little island of ours, because we're going to be here for a while. Should we use sand? Should we use apples? Should we use seashells? Like, what's the right way as far as rules of money? Well, Ludwig von Mises figured this out a long time ago. And the acronym to remember here is DUPULSA. It's not perfect because there's only one U in this whole thing, but I'm going to go through this acronym for you, and this is what we'll use to determine the rules of money. So the first D is durability, right? You can't have a storage of currency that's going to rot or something like that. So using food on the desert island, that would be a bad idea, right? Divisibility, you got to be able to divide it into small pieces to give people change. So giant rocks wouldn't work because you need to be able to give people change or something like that. Same reason, portability is P. You got to be able to carry this thing around. Another reason why giant rocks would be a bad decision, right? Uniformity. They all have to kind of look the same. So whatever you're going to use as far as your currency.
So I think this one was great because Paul really goes in, and that whole example.
Oh, it was
really goes
awesome.
Like you start thinking about it, and oh, that's where money gets its value. That's where money gets its.
For me, yeah, it was really good.
So then he applies all those topics to cryptocurrency, and that one was so cool that we actually had to make that conversation a two-part after we recorded. So it was the first one's kind of the history of the money and understanding what gives money value, and then the second part two, was more of how do we incorporate that into cryptocurrency and what gives that its value. So very interesting conversation, and cryptocurrency has been all over the news.
All over the news recently.
All year, really.
Yeah, we got people going to be going to jail.
Yeah.
Lots of fraud.
Just arrested in the Bahamas of all places. So
yeah.
Very interesting. So those are your three episodes.
Those were my favorite. Schitt's Creek was up there.
Oh yeah, Schitt's Creek.
I love that episode.
That was a really good episode that we did on Katie's blog post, and
it was all right. We love that show, and
we do all like that show, so it made it very easy, like the money lessons that we learned. My other one, I did the road trip one, the inflation one, which you've already covered. The one we haven't covered was coffee. We got to talk about coffee, and you and I both are drinking coffee as we speak. So cheers on some coffee. I think mine's Dunkin'. And we got to talk to a coffee co-op and how they do coffee. And I have the little clip here, which I thought was really cool. And I got to learn about coffee, not just like the financials behind it, but then also some of the actual coffee stuff.
Who was growing the coffee? What kind of work was involved? And really motivate us as a roaster to really do our best. We have the lighter end of the log to lift, if you like, to do our best to make that coffee, whatever kind of season they had, because coffee is an agricultural product, Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's less great. Sometimes there's pest issues. There's all kinds of stuff we have to ride out with the grower cooperatives we work with. So to really take that coffee, find the right roast temperature, get the most out of it, do the best blending, package it well, have bright labels. Our art is stands out quite a bit
Sure
on the
does.
shelf. We really wanted everything that we did to move the farmer's coffee as much as was possible.
Yeah, and that was a clip from that episode. It was just coffee co-op, and I
That
bought
was
some
so
of their
cool
coffee.
about the effects of the economic situation in not only here in America, but where they were getting the coffee and how it changed some of those farmers' lives.
Yeah,
And that was phenomenal.
yeah, I think it was really cool, and it's something that we're all, we love. So
Yeah.
it made it, and not just us, but it's one of America's favorite drinks, coffee.
And
So
you ordered some of their coffee,
I
didn't
did
you?
order some of their coffee. It was delicious. I ordered it whole bean so I could grind it
yourself?
myself, and then I even took the time to French press some of it. So there's like, let me give it its fair shot. So I
Wow.
most of it through the drip machine, but I did French press the first batch of each bag, and I thought they were awesome. I
I
gotta
love
order some
coffee,
more.
but I don't know what French press means. So that's something you just threw on me today. Is that something I should be doing?
No, it's too time consuming.
Okay, good. Glad to know that.
And then you got to clean the stuff when you're done. It's so much more work. That's why I only did like the first one or two, and then I
Okay.
just did it with a regular drip machine. But so that was one of my favorites. So I don't know, Katie wants to drop if she's in the chat any of her favorites. That would be cool. But it was a fun podcast year. We had some pretty cool episodes, some really cool guests.
Yeah, we did.
And it was a lot of learning.
Bob Wheeler.
Katie was saying she loved the Bob Wheeler episode, which was an awesome one, talking about learning how no one really knows what they're doing. Absolutely. And he was great because he's like a comedian accountant, which is an
Yeah,
odd
he was good.
combination just to start off with. And he's in the comedy world, so it was really cool talking to him.
He was funny.
He was very funny, and that's something CPA funny
Right.
don't always go together. Sorry to our CPA friends, but and then Katie also mentioned the episode we did with our friend Howard Eskew, professor at San Diego Mesa College and Southwestern Community College, and we talked to him about like youth and his experiences with money growing up, and how that's shaped how he gives back, and how he always makes sure to pay himself first. So I think that conversation with Howard was great, and that's another guest we should have back.
That's a passionate man.
You talk about someone who's all about spreading personal finances.
Oh yeah.
You got Howard's the real deal.
Lovely human being too.
Yeah. So, and he's spreading all over Mesa, all over
San Diego.
Southwestern College.
Yeah, he's making a difference, that man.
Yeah. So really cool episode. And he listens. So he's one of our listeners. So Howard, hope you're having a good day.
I'm just buttering you up, Howard.
Because we'll get texts from Howard and like, hey, that was a good episode, guys. I really like this or that. So thank you for listening, Howard. And so then that's it for the year in review. We got the big announcement Chase kind of mentioned earlier, but no more Talk Wealth to Me.
Yeah, Talk Wealth to Me. We're going through a little bit of a brand change. We will be having a new name, a new look, but just the topics are going to be the same. Everything else is going to be the same. It's as popular as this has become. We've been told that our name needs to change a bit. So there will be a big change. It'll be coming out on social media here in the very, very soon. We will be back at late January with season 7. We will be heading into, I believe, around 150 something episodes, 160 episodes.
I think
So-
we're in, we're quite a bit, I don't remember the exact number, but yeah, we're in like 160 something range.
Right. And the big one is this is, we talk about personal finance a lot, but what we found out from fans is how much they liked the fact that it's so just math, that it's real life situations, that finances, money, they're things that we make these decisions. They are all these decisions that we make are that they will have an effect on us financially. And we forget that sometimes. So that name is going to kind of bring it in as a little bit less just money and about money and life, which is what we all want to make better, is live a better and happier life, and not being stressed out by finances can help us get to that place.
Yeah. And I think
So
Katie,
we're looking forward to it.
Katie mentioned we're at 161 episodes published so far. So
There you go.
162.
I should know that since I publish them every week.
I know. and then I tweet about them, and then I make the little clips for it. But so it's hard to keep track of the number. It keeps ticking up. So
And they run into each other. I mean, remember you asked me what one was one of my favorites, and oops.
You mentioned one, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good one." And then we looked
but
it
that
up,
was
I
in
like, "That was
2021.
2021.
You whoops.
To try again. And I was wondering, why is that not one of the fan favorites? I remember it being a very popular one. Squid Game 2 coming out
Squid Game.
at
That
some
was
point.
it.
So
It was the Squid Game
we might
episode.
have to make a Squid Game episode number 2 also after we all go and watch the new season on Netflix. If
No
you and
thanks.
Katie
I don't know how
want to
that's
muster up
yeah,
watching
that's
that.
crazy. Crazy.
So we do
town.
talk about everything, and check it out wherever you get your other favorite podcasts. Obviously, we're in your top. We probably showed up in your Spotify year-end review, the Warped. So wherever else you get your podcast, check us out. Not all the episodes are going to apply to you. That's all right. There's plenty of them, so you'll find something for everyone. And we keep them entertaining as best we can, while we also keep them educational. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we
tune
close
in
down
and-
this year, I want to say thank you to everyone. It's been a rough year for myself and my kids, my family, and this podcast and work is my work family has been incredibly supportive. Phil, I want to thank you, Katie, for all the help and fill in the blanks when I couldn't be there. And I'm very grateful for all the people that I do have in my life, and that includes all our listeners. And wish you all a very, very happy holidays.
yeah,
And
happy
a new year.
holidays.
I'm looking forward to a new year.
And the new year, turning of the page. We'll go into 2023, and safe travels for anyone doing any travels during the holidays. And yeah, thank you everybody, and we'll see you all next year.